Hello, Erica here, and I'm here today with like the biggest wrap-up I've ever done. It's the end of January. It's actually the beginning of February. But I read a lot of books in January, and I probably should have like done the thing where I split this in half or do it week by week, but I didn't. Basically the reason I got so much reading done in January is just because I read a lot of really short books, so it's not as impressive as it looks. But I have already talked about a lot of these. I have videos forthcoming for a lot of them in the near future. I do have a few videos filmed that I just have to edit and get up, so you'll be seeing lots more of my face soon. And let us talk about what I read in January. So I started off the year with this tiny little book. This is Brave Enough by Cheryl Strayed. This isn't like a real book. I don't know what's a real book. But this is just a collection of quotes by Cheryl Strayed, like so. From Tiny Beautiful Things, which was one of my favorite books of last year, and also from Wild, which I have not read yet, but I will someday. And I really like her, and this little tiny book is so cute. Look how cute it is. It's gold. It's shiny. I love it. So this was enjoyable. It was really motivating. It was a really motivating way to kind of kick my year off, and I'm glad I read it. I think I gave it 3 stars overall. A lot of it I had read before, but I just enjoy having this around. Next, I listened to the audiobook of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I'm currently re-listening to all of the Harry Potter books on audiobook because they are now available on Audible, of course, and I've never really listened to the audiobooks before, which is interesting, but I'm really enjoying re-listening to them, and of course, I love this. I don't need to say anything else about it. Then, Bout of Books happened. I will link below to my Bout of Books wrap-up where I talk a little bit more about these things. But I read 4 books that week, and the first thing I finished was The Slow Regard of Silent Things by Patrick Rothfuss. This is kind of a novella, a companion novella to the Kingkiller Chronicles series, which I love. And it's all about Ari, who's amazing, and I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. Ari's one of my favorite characters. This book, I don't know if I mentioned it, but it's also really beautifully illustrated. I don't think I mentioned this in my Bout of Books wrap-up. It's illustrated by Nate Taylor, and it's just so much fun. Then I read The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly by Sun-Mi Wang, who is a Korean author, and this is kind of like the Korean... It reminded me more of Animal Farm than it did anything else, but it's kind of a fable. It's about a hen who dreamed she could fly. Again, I talk about it more in my Bout of Books wrap-up, so you can check it out there. I give this 3 stars overall. I also read the 2nd volume of Sweet Tooth during Bout of Books. I love this series. I will talk about this more in my next comics reviews video. That's a lie. In the one after the next one. So I have one filmed for like October through December that I just have to edit and post. And then I'm going to have to do an entire separate comics wrap-up just for January, which I normally don't have to do. But I read so many graphic novels this month that I'm going to have to do a separate one. So that'll be forthcoming at some time. Don't know when. I also read A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams. This was my first Tennessee Williams play, which is a total shame because I loved him, which doesn't surprise me at all. I kind of knew I was going to. This is amazing. Again, I talk about it more in my Bout of Books wrap-up, but I gave this 4 stars overall. Then I finished listening to Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban on audiobook. Again, awesome. So good. Loved it. I also read A Wild Swan by Michael Cunningham. I'll link below to my Goodreads review of this book because I wrote quite a lot on Goodreads. I'm trying to be better about actually writing reviews for the books I read on Goodreads. I really, really loved a few of the fairy tale retellings in this collection, and some of the other ones fell flat. Michael Cunningham kind of does like a gritty take on fairy tales. They're kind of highly sexualized, and they're set in a mashup between like the traditional fairy tale worlds and our modern world. So they're like cell phones, and they're pretty dark and twisted. I enjoyed this. I like Michael Cunningham's writing. If you would like to know more, again, there will be a link to my Goodreads review down below. I believe I gave this 4 stars overall. Then the 24 and 48 hour readathon happened. I very recently posted my wrap-up for this, a little bit late. So I talk about all of these books in my wrap-up, but I will go through them quickly for you. I read Beautiful Darkness, which is a standalone graphic novel by French artist and author Fabien Villemain and Kira Scott. I don't know. Really dark, pretty twisted. I think I gave it 3 or 4 stars overall. I read The Diamond as Big as the Ritz by F. Scott Fitzgerald, which is a novella of his that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I think I gave this 4 stars. I don't really remember. It's all getting a little blurry. I listened to / read A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett, which I wasn't completely enthralled with. I think I gave it 2 or 2.5 stars. I don't remember. Glad I read it. Wish I had read it when I was younger. That's basically all I have to say about it. I also read Hark, a Vagrant by Kate Beaton, which is an excellent collection of comics, which, again, I will talk about in my January comics reviews video. Oh my god, I read so much during 24 and 48. I didn't realize it until I'm going through it so quickly right now. A Guide to Being Born by Ramona Ausubel is a collection of short stories. They're kind of magical realism fairy tale-esque. Not really fairy tale-esque. And they're not like, they're really heavy on the magical realism, but there are some magical realism elements to it. Really enjoyed this, gave this collection 4 stars, highly recommend. Also during 24 and 48, I read Carmen by Prosper Merimee, which was, it was what it was. I am glad I read it, but I wasn't like blown away by it. I gave it 3 stars. I read the 3rd volume of Sweet Tooth, which was absolutely fabulous. I immediately, when I finished reading it, ordered the last 3 volumes in the series. Again, January comics reviews will be up soon. I read Head Off and Split, which is a collection of poetry by Nikky Finney. This is my favorite book that I have read so far this year. This is my favorite book that I read in January. I mean, Harry Potter excluded, because those are rereads. I have already filmed a full review of this, and it will be up shortly. Loved it. 5 stars. And the last thing I read during the 24 and 48 hour readathon was The End of the Affair by Greene, which I listened to on audiobook. I think that I lost a little bit in audiobook form. I'm going to revisit this later this year in print because it's a pretty short book. And I liked what I got out of it. I just feel like I'm going to be able to get so much more out of it upon rereading it and also reading it in print as opposed to trying to listen to it. The audiobook was really well done because it's narrated by Colin Firth, so, you know, that was pretty delightful. I gave it 3 stars for now, but again, we're going to do a do-over on this one. So that's all I read during 24 and 48, and then I've finished up a few more things towards the end of the month. I finally finished reading The Trip to Echo Spring by Olivia Laing. This is a book that chronicles the lives of different writers, specifically 6 male American authors and their struggles with alcoholism. So I've talked about this book before because I've been reading it forever, but it talks about Tennessee Williams, Ernest Hemingway, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Raymond Carver, John Cheever, and John Berryman. I was really enjoying this until about the halfway point. And I might do a full review of this still, but I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about it. I gave it 3 stars overall. The thing that I had an issue with, there were a couple of things. One, I felt like the pacing was weird. Like, I feel like there were like 100 pages of the book dedicated to Fitzgerald, or not Fitzgerald, to Tennessee Williams, but then, like, John Berryman was kind of skimmed over, which I didn't really mind, because I read John Berryman early last year and did not enjoy. But you know, there's like it says it's about these 6 authors, so I expected there to be some sort of balance between how much time was spent with each author, which was not the case, or didn't feel like the case to me. And then the other thing I had an issue with is that Olivia Laing is like traveling across the country while she is writing this book, I guess, or while she's working on this book. She's visiting the places where all of these writers kind of lived and worked. And that started to kind of wear on me. Like, at first it was interesting, but then she wasn't really saying much. So you kind of get this mashup where it's like part memoir, part travelogue, part biography, part kind of psychological dive into alcoholism and its effects on writers. And I didn't necessarily feel like any element was played out to its fullest. And yeah. So I gave it 3 stars. I liked it. I learned a lot from it about the lives of these authors, which was excellent, because especially with Fitzgerald, Hemingway, and Tennessee Williams, I was very intrigued about their lives. But I wouldn't recommend it to just anyone. I'll put it that way. It was worth reading, for sure. Then I read the last 3 volumes of Sweet Tooth, which I had previously mentioned I ordered as soon as I finished the 3rd volume, so volumes 4, 5, and 6. I'm not going to talk about these here because I will talk more in depth in my comics reviews videos, and that way Those of you who don't read comics and aren't interested in reading comics don't have to suffer through me talking about them. Then I finished one more novel in the month. That was Euphoria by Lily King. This caught my eye when it first came out because the cover is beautiful, right? And then I didn't pick it up because it sounded kind of like a historical romance kind of deal, and I'm not all about that. But I finally picked it up because I was drawn to it. Every time I saw it in a bookstore, I was like, I want that, but I don't want that. So I picked it up, and I read it pretty much right after I bought it this month, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. It might be more like a 3.5 now that I've let it settle a little bit, but it's inspired by the life of Margaret Mead, who was an anthropologist in the early half of the 20th century, and it's a fictionalized kind of account of her time in New Guinea, living amongst Aboriginal tribes and things of that nature. And it's also got this love triangle element, which I usually hate, but this one was played out really well. Like, what I usually hate about this like love triangle thing that people do is that you have the central male or female character and you're inside their head and they're like so tormented about who to choose and what to do, and oh my gosh, my life is hard, everyone loves me. I hate that. So in this one, you don't get a lot of that. You get to see things from multiple perspectives, and I just thought it was really well done for a love triangle. There's like no internal angst or anything like that. So I would recommend this if you haven't picked it up. I haven't heard it talked about too much, and it came out in 2014. It won the Kirkus Prize, and the New York Times Book Review loved it. So I really expected it to be like heavy on the kind of chick lit side of the spectrum, and it wasn't really that at all for me. So do recommend. And lastly, yesterday, which was the 31st of January, I managed to knock back 2 more comics. I told you I read a lot of comics this month. So I read the 1st and 2nd volumes of Lumberjanes. I appear not to be quite as enthralled by these as everyone else is. I don't know why that is. Maybe when I let them sink in a little bit more, I'll love them more. I gave the 1st volume 3 stars, the 2nd volume 3.5 stars, and again, I'll talk about these more in my next comics wrap up. Not the next one, the one after the next one. You know, we already talked about that. So, that's all I read in January. Basically, I read a giant stack of comics and graphic novels. I read a collection of poetry, a children's classic, 2 middle grade books, a fantasy book, a play, I think 3 novels, and a non-fiction book. So I read basically a little bit of everything. It was a fun month. I'm glad that 2016 is off to an awesome start. I did not do too terrible much purchasing this month. I bought a few comics, but that's okay because I've read most of them. I think I bought something like 12 books in January, and I think I've already read 9 of them. So that's very good for me. So I'm pleased with that. As far as plans for February go, I will be reading The Book of Strange New Things by Michelle Faber. There are a ton of booktubers kind of doing a read-along for that book this month. I'm sure you will see it talked about. Max from Well Done Books is kind of spearheading and organizing, but everyone's reading it at their own pace, and if you are interested in reading it as well, that way you can chat about it with us. That would be lovely. I'm very excited about that book. I'm definitely going to pick up a few things for Black History Month because February is Black History Month in the US. And I'm going to try to participate in #ReadSoulLit, the Instagram challenge that Dee Dee from Brown Girl Reading. Haha, I finally remembered to say her channel name correctly since she's changed it. She and Danielle from One Small Paw are doing a read-along as well in February, which I unfortunately cannot join in, but you should check it out. I'll link it down below. There's going to be so many links down below. And that is all I have to say. I have to go now and edit this and get it up so that you guys can actually watch videos of my face, because apparently some of you like doing that, which I still find to be like the most bizarre element of my life. That's all. I'll be back soon. Bye!